The cold hits you before your eyes open. It's not the kind of cold you know today. There's no thermostat, no insulation, and certainly no thick blankets. You're wrapped in rough wool, laid across straw that's damp with last night's sweat and rodents' droppings. The floor beneath you is packed earth, and every breath you take feels like drawing smoke through ice. It's 4:30 a.m. The rooster hasn't even crowed yet, but your day in a medieval village has already begun. You sleep with your family, parents, siblings, sometimes a neighbor, inside a single dark room that serves as your bedroom, kitchen, and living space. Privacy doesn't exist. The fire, your only source of warmth and light, died down hours ago. Reigniting it means effort. Striking flint, kindling wet twigs, and blowing into the ashes with frostbitten lips. There is no mattress, no socks, no toothpaste, no running water. Your mouth tastes like sour beer and smoke. Your teeth ache, and if you're unlucky, and most people are, you already have a few rotting in your gums, brown and cracked from chewing gritty bread baked with pebbles. You're already hungry. Before food, you must deal with animals. You're not some high lord with servants. You're a peasant, and your family's survival depends on a thin cow, 2 bony goats, and a few chickens that don't always return at night. You rise in the dark because that's when the work starts. The cow needs to be milked. If she's dry, it's a disaster. No butter, no trade, no breakfast. Chickens are checked for eggs, but often they've been stolen by rats or neighbors. Your boots, if you have them, are stiff from the previous day's mud and manure. Most villagers don't own shoes at all. You step outside barefoot into mud that never dries, because the village has no drainage, and you share the same walking paths with pigs, oxen, and every other filthy creature. And the smell, oh, the smell is constant, clings to you. Everything reeks of smoke, rot, dung, and mold. You don't even notice it after a while. Your nose adjusts, but a modern visitor, they'd retch immediately. Breakfast is a luxury word. You might have a crust of rye bread left over from yesterday, hard as wood, dark as earth, and filled with bits of grit from the grindstone. Grit that slowly destroys your teeth. If you're lucky, there's a turnip or a bit of pottage bubbling from the night before. Some mix of barley, cabbage, onion, and weeds thickened with pig fat if you had any. No sugar, no fruit, no spices. Salt is rare and expensive. There's no milk unless the cow gave some. No eggs unless the chickens laid. Meat? Forget it. You eat meat a few times a year, if that. Water is not clean. You drink weak ale instead. A low-alcohol brew children drink daily because it won't kill them like the river will. If you're thirsty and poor, the best you can do is a cloudy broth or some stale ale. By now, it's around 6 a.m., and you're hauling water from the nearest well. It's half a mile away, and the bucket is heavy. You'll spill some. You'll trip once. Your back aches already, and your hands are raw from carrying yesterday's firewood. After water comes fuel. Wood is precious. You scavenge for sticks. If you're lucky, a neighbor died recently, and his house is being broken down for firewood. Otherwise, you rely on dung, animal and human, shaped into patties, dried in the sun, and burned for cooking. The smell fills your home, sticks to your clothes, and settles into your lungs. Chores continue. You patch the thatch on your roof. It leaks every time it rains. You mend your tunic, spinning thread from scratch. You check your food stores, rats got in again. You curse, knowing no one will help. Everyone's hungry. Everyone's tired. Men, women, and children all work. Children as young as 4 feet animals spin wool, gather herbs. By 7, they carry water. By 12, they plow, sow, or serve. Your day is scheduled not by the hour, but by the sun. When it rises, work begins. When it sets, you may rest, unless the thatch needs repair or someone's sick, which happens often. You may walk 2 miles to reach your Lord's land. You owe him labor 3 days a week, sometimes more. You can't say no. You farm his field. You grow grain for his bread. You get no pay, just the right to stay on your land until you can't pay rent, or your crop fails, or you die of cold. And many do. In this first part of your day, you're already at risk. Infection is everywhere. That scratch on your hand from the pig pen could fester into sepsis. That toothache, it might lead to an abscess, then blood poisoning. There's no doctor, only a local wise woman with herbs and hope. Even a cold can kill. There are no antibiotics, no painkillers, no knowledge of germs. People die from childbirth, diarrhea, broken bones, or bad air. You do not understand why you're sick. You pray, you hope, you suffer, and yet people go on. You wrap your tunic tighter. You scrape dirt from the floor. You help your neighbor slaughter a goat because it stopped walking. And you whisper thanks that, for one more day, you're still standing. And this is only the morning in a medieval village. You haven't yet gone to church, haven't faced the feudal lord, haven't risked injury in the fields or watched someone accused of heresy. Your stomach still growls. Your back still aches. You're cold, hungry, overworked, and already exhausted by 9 a.m. The day hasn't even begun. The morning begins in a medieval village. Hunger, dirt, and cold. By the time the sun climbs above the trees, you've already worked for hours. It's now midday in your medieval life. A point in time that carries no break, no comfort, and certainly no food that would satisfy someone from the modern world. But you don't complain. You can't afford to. Complaints lead to punishment or worse, suspicion. And in this age, suspicion is a death sentence waiting to happen. You wipe your brow with your sleeve. The linen is rough, almost like burlap. Sweat soaks through. Dirt clings to your skin like a second layer. But you keep working. Your day centers on labor in the fields you don't own. You owe boon work to the local lord, who claims everything. Your time, your harvest, even your children if he decides he needs servants or soldiers. Today you're threshing wheat, bending your spine with every swing of the flail. The sun is unrelenting. You wear no hat, just a woolen hood. Your hands are blistered. You keep moving. If you pause too long, the reeve, the Lord's farm overseer, might notice. His staff is not just symbolic. He's allowed to beat you for laziness, real or perceived. You're also watched by other peasants. Everyone's afraid. Everyone's tired. No one dares help. They remember the last man who failed to meet his work quota. His family was evicted, his hut torn down, his wife and children scattered to other villages like ash on the wind. If it's summer, you're burning under the sun, your skin turning raw without any ointment to soothe it. There is no such thing as sunscreen or rest shade. Trees are sparse, and resting under one without permission could be considered laziness. If it's winter, your fingers are stiff, your boots thin, and your breath forms little clouds that vanish as quickly as hope. But the field still demands its due. In either case, you cannot stop. You must plant, reap, and carry bundles of crops that are not yours. The strongest carry the heaviest, and even the children carry their share. At around midday, if you're lucky, someone will bring pottage, leftover from the morning, now lukewarm and congealed, contains no meat, barely any salt, and is thickened with whatever grew last month. There may be a hunk of black bread, often moldy or chewed by mice before it ever reached your bowl. There are no forks. Spoons are carved from wood. Most just drink from the pot and pass it along. Germs spread easily, though no one understands them yet. Colds, coughs, and fevers ripple through the village constantly. Someone's always sick. Someone's always dying. The well water isn't boiled. If you want a safer drink, you sip weak ale, though its stale tang and occasional sourness do little to help your thirst. You eat standing or sitting on the ground. There's no lunch break. Only a brief pause to fill your belly with barely enough fuel to continue. In the afternoon, the local priest may wander by, not to help, but to remind you that your suffering is holy. Pain, he says, is the path to heaven. You nod because you must. Tithes are due. You already gave 1/10 of your harvest last season, but he mentions again that your soul depends on more. Maybe some eggs, maybe a bit of grain, maybe your daughter working at the rectory. You hate him, but you bow. He holds God's ear. To offend him is to risk being accused of sin or witchcraft, and in this age, superstition rules stronger than law. If you're a woman who knows how to brew herbs or deliver babies, you walk a thin line. One rumor and your life is over. A misstep can cost you everything. Trample a lord's vegetable patch? You'll pay a fine higher than your yearly income. Kill a neighbor's pig by accident? You may be beaten or exiled. Say the wrong thing in front of the wrong person. You could be imprisoned or worse. There are dungeons, yes, but sometimes punishment comes faster. A public whipping, a day in the stocks where passers-by throw filth at your face, or a branding iron applied to your palm. You scream. People watch. Children learn that silence is survival. There are no second chances. There are no courts for the poor, only fear. As the sun begins to fall, your limbs feel like lead. Your stomach is hollow again. You think of your children, your sick mother, your broken fence. There's no plan to relax later, no plan to heal. Just enough energy left to make it home and maybe chew something before sleep overtakes you. But you're not there yet. And now evening approaches. Your workday ends not with rest, but with chores. You'll tend the fire. You'll patch clothes. You'll soothe wounds, share a crust of bread. Maybe hear the church bells remind you of your smallness again. You survived midday, but in medieval times, survival is not the same as living. What will you find when you return home? Peace or more hardship? You trudge back toward your hut. Your legs tremble. Your back throbs. The weight of fatigue presses harder than the Lord's expectations. But you don't stop. No one does. The sun is dipping below the horizon, and once it's gone, darkness will rule. There are no street lights, no electricity, just oil lamps if you can afford oil. More likely, you'll light a few sticks or burn dried dung, hoping it won't choke the baby. Your hut welcomes you with silence and cold. If you have a spouse or children, they're already inside, curled in corners, conserving warmth. There is no fire yet. You start it carefully using precious kindling. The smoke billows out the open roof hole, but some lingers. You cough. Everyone coughs. Your home is dark. Windows are tiny and covered in oiled parchment, not glass. You can barely see your own feet. You sit close to each other not for affection, but because body heat is currency. You cook the same gruel again. This barley or oats, boiled with water. Maybe some greens if your foraging turned up anything useful. Most nights, the meal feels like a punishment, but your stomach doesn't care. There is no such thing as pajamas. You sleep in the clothes you wore all day. There's no bath. The village bathhouse might be open once a week, if it hasn't been shut for spreading bad humors. You wipe your hands with a dirty rag and hope the lice won't bite too hard tonight. If you're lucky, you have straw to sleep on. If not, you curl on bare earth. The cold creeps in through the walls. Wind whistles through every crack. Rats scratch at the corners. You try not to think about them. As the village quiets, your thoughts grow louder. Will the harvest fail? Will the Lord raise taxes again? Will the priest accuse someone in your family of heresy? Will the sickness come back? Every breath is a prayer, but you're never sure who's listening. There's no time for dreams, just exhaustion, and yet there's routine, familiarity, even community. You know your neighbors. You share pain and scraps with them. You bury their dead. You comfort their children. That, in its way, is a kind of hope. The day ends the way it began, in cold, hunger, and silence. You've survived another day in medieval times, not because of strength, not because of privilege, but because you've learned to endure the unbearable. The world you live in offers no safety net, no mercy, no comfort, and yet people lived this life for centuries. They built cathedrals, they raised children, they sang in church and wept at burials. They carved out joy from sorrow, somehow, and in doing so they passed down the world to us. A world we can barely recognize, a world we could never survive in, even for one day. Hunger, in the medieval world, was not a visitor. It was a permanent guest, one that lived beside you, slept near your bed, and breathed down your neck every day. There were good years, of course. Seasons when barley rose tall and turnips came thick from the ground, but those were rare and they never lasted. Most of the time you were hungry, but sometimes you were starving. That was when everything changed. When people began eating things that were never meant for the mouth. When even honor had to bend to the demands of an empty stomach. And perhaps the most haunting image of all was the pot boiling not stew, not soup, but the shredded leather from an old shoe. To understand how desperate it got, you have to imagine the world after the sky turned against you. In the spring of 1315, the rains began, and they didn't stop. For weeks, and then months, the skies wept endlessly. Crops drowned. Seeds rotted in the fields. Grain stores dwindled. Animals sickened in the muck. And there was no plan B. Farming was life. There were no supermarkets, no food imports, no emergency trucks rolling in with sacks of rice. If your village's harvest failed, you didn't eat. If your neighbor's harvest failed, they didn't eat. And if it rained across an entire continent, like it did in 1315, entire kingdoms began to starve. By the summer of that year, the Great Famine had begun. And no one would ever forget it.in the first stage of famine. People turned to their stored food. Barrels of salted fish, sacks of grain, dried beans, smoked pork if you're lucky. But that supply runs out fast, especially when rain soaks through roofs and spoils everything. Rats come, mold follows, and soon you're left with nothing edible at all. The livestock go next. Chickens, pigs, goats, cows. They're sold or slaughtered. Their meat feeds the village for a day or two, then nothing. Next come the animals not meant to be eaten. Dogs, cats, even rats. In some places, people went out at night to hunt rodents, boiling them with herbs if they had any, chewing carefully to avoid broken teeth on tiny bones. But it would get worse, much worse. Leather was never meant to be food. It was meant to be worn, to hold saddles or boots together. But leather comes from animals, and that meant it could be softened, scraped, and boiled. Villagers began cutting straps from old shoes, old belts, saddlebags, even church banners. They'd strip off the outer layer, soak it for hours, and boil it until it could be chewed. Tasted like earth, salt, and bitterness. It offered no real nourishment, but it gave the illusion of a meal. Boiling leather wasn't just a metaphor. It was a grim reality. And sometimes, when the leather ran out, people turned to worse things. In the early days of famine, people shared. The church gave from its stores. Lords opened their grain barns, partly from guilt, partly from fear. After all, hungry peasants could become angry peasants. But generosity didn't last. The famine stretched from 1 year to 2. By 1316, no one had anything left to share. Villagers began to turn on each other. Theft increased. Accusations flew. People with food were accused of hoarding or witchcraft. Others whispered about cannibalism in the next town over, though no one ever admitted it aloud. And through it all, the weather mocked you. Rains that wouldn't end. Cold that stunted the spring. Sun that came too late, too weak. Children died quietly. Old people went into the woods and didn't come back. Imagine waking up with nothing in your hut. No bread, no grains, no wood, no hope. You check the stores. Empty. You check the garden. Rot. You go outside, not to gather food, but to walk, because movement distracts from the ache in your stomach. You meet others in the road, their faces gaunt, their eyes hollow. No one speaks. There is no good news. You sit by the church and beg, even though everyone is begging. The priest comes out and says it is God's test. That hunger will make you holy, but you're too weak to care. You pass by a house and smell something cooking. You stop. Your body turns nose first. You ask, "What is it?" They don't answer. You ask again. They close the door. And whatever it is, it's not something they should be eating. But who are you to judge? The famine was not just about food. It was about the unraveling of society, the testing of human boundaries. Boiling leather was only the beginning. In Section 2, we'll explore what happened when the hunger deepened, when communities began to fall apart, and people were forced to make choices no one should ever face. The days during famine are long, but the nights are longer. You lie awake not because you can't sleep, but because your stomach won't let you. Twists in pain. You feel weak, lightheaded, sometimes even numb. You've gone 2 days without eating anything but boiled nettles and the rind of a dried turnip. The air inside your hut is filled with silence. Even the rats have vanished, either eaten or moved on. The people around you have begun to change. Their faces are sharper, eyes sunken, skin loose. But it's not just the physical transformation, it's the mental one. Famine doesn't just empty the belly. It empties the soul. In the second year of the Great Famine, 1316, something inside society cracked. What had once been whispered became common. What had once been unthinkable started to happen in places where the church bells still rang. People became scavengers, not of the forest, but of each other. Graveyards were no longer sacred. Some villagers began to dig at night, not for treasure, but for flesh. In the worst-hit regions, freshly buried bodies were exhumed. The smell was unbearable, the act unholy, but starvation made all sins feel distant. Stories spread, some likely true, others grown in terror. Mothers abandoning children, families locking the sick in huts and sealing the doors. One tale from Flanders described a man caught roasting the limbs of a neighbor. He was executed, but others watched, not with disgust but curiosity. When you have nothing, the mind begins to justify anything. The priests kept preaching. They said the famine was God's punishment, perhaps for pride, or for impure thoughts, or for that heretic burned last year who cursed the sky as he died. They told people to fast, to pray, to give penance. But no one had food to fast from. The monasteries still held stores, guarded tightly. Some priests shared, but others feared mobs. And they had reason to. In parts of France and England, hungry peasants stormed abbeys, tore open grain silos, and lit candles for stolen bread. Faith did not disappear, but it was tested more harshly than any Sunday sermon could bear. As if hunger wasn't enough, disease came riding its coattails. Famine weakens the body, and when your body weakens, anything can kill you. Diarrhea, infections, fever, wounds that won't heal. There are no doctors, no medicine, just herbs, prayers, and guesses. Children waste away. The elderly vanish overnight. And still the rain falls. In 1316, bodies piled up faster than they could be buried. In some towns, there were no grave diggers left. People simply covered the dead with leaves and walked away. Or they burned them, or they left them in the woods, hoping animals would finish what death had started. You learn not to ask too many questions. If someone disappears, you say a short prayer, and focus on your own survival. You try to forage. You try to hope. Roots, moss, tree bark. You chew on boiled thistle stalks. Wild mushrooms, dangerous though they are, seem worth the risk. Some people die from eating poisonous plants. Others eat raw frogs. Some crush bones to boil for broth, even though there's almost no marrow left. Every forest becomes a battleground. Every field picked clean. And when there's nothing left, you go back to the shoe leather. It's dry, sour, filled with dirt. But you boil it anyway. You chew and chew and chew and swallow something that isn't food but feels close enough to it for now. By now, the famine has changed you. You are not the person you were 2 years ago. You've seen things you can never unsee. You've done things you swore you never would. But the rains are finally slowing. A harvest might come, and with it, hope. When the famine finally loosened its grip in late 1317, it didn't do so with joy or relief. It slipped away quietly, like a thief satisfied with his haul. The rains eased. Crops began to grow again. Sunlight returned. But by then, the world had changed. Your village was smaller now. Whole families had disappeared. The field once filled with children's laughter was now overgrown and silent. And though food was finally coming back, the memory of hunger was still fresh, etched into your bones, into your dreams. You don't celebrate. You rebuild. Roofs are patched. Graves are marked, those that can be. Carts creak again with grain, but you no longer trust the harvest. Every meal feels temporary. Every bite reminds you of the days when there was nothing. People plant again, yes, but they also hoard. They dig secret storage pits beneath their huts. They dry herbs. They watch the sky with suspicion. You've survived. But survival has left its mark. Took more than lives. Took innocence. You saw neighbors betray each other. You saw churches close their gates. You saw leaders fail. You learned that kindness has limits, that desperation changes everyone. Even now, as food becomes steady, you eat too quickly. You sleep with fear. You hide crusts of bread under your bedding just in case. And then there's the guilt that you survived when others didn't, that you ate things you still can't speak of, that you whispered prayers for the rain to stop, even though you didn't believe anyone was listening. The Great Famine didn't just kill individuals. It weakened kingdoms. In England, France, the Low Countries, the effects were long-lasting. Armies shrank. Peasant revolts simmered. Trust in the church faded. Faith in rulers cracked. And the population, it had dropped dramatically by millions. Historians estimate that 10 to 15% of people across Europe died, not in war or plague, but in hunger, silence, and mud. And those who lived, they were never the same. Famine is not loud. It does not arrive with drums or trumpets. It creeps in through damp soil and cloudy skies. It grows in empty bowls and silent kitchens. The people of the early 1300s had no defenses against it. No stores to raid. No systems to protect them. They boiled leather not out of madness, but because it was the last thing between life and death. And they endured, somehow. But the scars they carried, those would last generations. You wake to pain. That's how the day starts. Your joints ache from sleeping on packed dirt. Your back screams from the labor of yesterday. But there's no time to linger, no moment to stretch. The sun hasn't risen, but already the village stirs. You are a serf bound to the land, owned in all but name. You cannot leave without permission. You cannot hunt the woods, fish the river, or gather more than you're allowed. Even your breath feels borrowed. You rise quietly, careful not to disturb the others in the hut. Your wife is already stoking the fire, her hands red from cold. The children whimper in their sleep, thin limbs curled tightly beneath scraps of wool. There's no breakfast, not really, just a piece of coarse bread, so hard it could break a tooth. You chew slowly, not because you savor it, but because it's the only meal you'll have before sunset. Outside, the air is thick with mist and the smell of animals. The cows low in the pen. Chickens rustle in the straw. Somewhere, a neighbor curses. Someone else is already at the well. The village begins to move as if choreographed by suffering itself. You gather your tools, wooden-handled, iron-tipped, handed down from father to son, and head to the fields. They stretch out before you in rows, wet and black with early spring rot. These are not your fields. They belong to the Lord in the manor up the hill. You work them not for pay, but because your life depends on it. If you fail to meet your labor quota, your hut could be taken, your family turned out, your body put in the stocks. Today is a boon work day, obligatory labor owed to the Lord. You'll plow from sunrise to sunset, without pause. The soil is heavy. Rain has turned it to sludge. Every step sinks. Every lift of the hoe pulls at muscles already knotted from years of toil. By mid-morning, your shirt clings to your back. Sweat mixes with dirt until your skin becomes another kind of soil. The reeve, the Lord's appointed overseer, walks the furrows with a rod. He watches. He counts. He notes who lags behind. You don't speak to him. You don't meet his eye. The last man who did spent a night in the pit for insubordination. You hear someone groan. An old man collapses to his knees. The reeve shouts, then strikes. The others look away. No one helps. Helping means guilt. Guilt means punishment. So you keep working. Around midday there's a pause. Not a break. Just a moment to chew more bread, drink some bitter ale. Water is risky. It often carries disease. The ale is weak, made from leftover grain and boiled to kill off the worst of it. You sip. You wipe your brow. Then back to work. The sun is hot now, high and uncaring. You think about your own plot of land, the narrow strip you farm when your duties allow. This year's yield was poor. If it fails again, you won't have enough to pay the tithe to the church and the rent to the manor. Something will have to give, and it's usually the serf who gives first. In the afternoon, you dig ditches. The mud sucks at your feet. Your arms are numb. You think of dinner, of sleep, of a time when the ground wasn't so hard and the days so long. But those thoughts are dangerous. They slow your hands, and slow hands attract attention. The reeve calls the end of work just before dusk. You trudge home, spine bent, tools dragging behind you. You do not talk. No one does. There's nothing left to say. Back at the hut, your wife has prepared a pot of pottage, mostly water, thickened with a turnip and a handful of wild greens. The children eat greedily. You eat silently, trying not to think about how thin they've grown. Afterward, you patch a boot, sharpen your scythe, mend the roof with bits of straw scavenged from the manor's threshing floor. There is no rest, not truly. When the fire dies, you lie beside it and stare into the smoke. The hut is silent again. The darkness presses in. This was a typical day, not a bad one. No one died. No one was punished. But your body feels as though it's aged 10 years. And tomorrow you'll do it all again. You wake to pain. That's how the day starts. Your joints ache from sleeping on packed dirt. Your back screams from the labor of yesterday. But there's no time to linger, no moment to stretch. The sun hasn't risen, but already the village stirs. You are a serf bound to the land owned in all but name. You cannot leave without permission. You cannot hunt the woods, fish the river, or gather more than you're allowed. Even your breath feels borrowed. You rise quietly, careful not to disturb the others in the hut. Your wife is already stoking the fire, her hands red from cold. The children whimper in their sleep, thin limbs curled tightly beneath scraps of wool. There's no breakfast, not really, just a piece of coarse bread, so hard it could break a tooth. You chew slowly, not because you savor it, but because it's the only meal you'll have before sunset. Outside, the air is thick with mist and the smell of animals. The cows low in the pen. Chickens rustle in the straw. Somewhere, a neighbor curses. Someone else is already at the well. The village begins to move as if choreographed by suffering itself. You gather your tools, wooden-handled, iron-tipped, handed down from father to son, and head to the fields. They stretch out before you in rows, wet and black with early spring rot. These are not your fields. They belong to the Lord in the manor up the hill. You work them not for pay, but because your life depends on it. If you fail to meet your labor quota, your hut could be taken, your family turned out, your body put in the stocks. Today is a boon work day, obligatory labor owed to the Lord. You'll plow from sunrise to sunset, without pause. The soil is heavy. Rain has turned it to sludge. Every step sinks. Every lift of the hoe pulls at muscles already knotted from years of toil. By mid-morning, your shirt clings to your back. Sweat mixes with dirt until your skin becomes another kind of soil. The reeve, the Lord's appointed overseer, walks the furrows with a rod. He watches. He counts. He notes who lags behind. You don't speak to him. You don't meet his eye. The last man who did spent a night in the pit for insubordination. You hear someone groan. An old man collapses to his knees. The reeve shouts, then strikes. The others look away. No one helps. Helping means guilt. Guilt means punishment. So you keep working. Around midday there's a pause. Not a break. Just a moment to chew more bread, drink some bitter ale. Water is risky. It often carries disease. The ale is weak, made from leftover grain and boiled to kill off the worst of it. You sip. You wipe your brow. Then back to work. The sun is hot now, high and uncaring. You think about your own plot of land, the narrow strip you farm when your duties allow. This year's yield was poor. If it fails again, you won't have enough to pay the tithe to the church and the rent to the manor. Something will have to give, and it's usually the serf who gives first. In the afternoon, you dig ditches. The mud sucks at your feet. Your arms are numb. You think of dinner, of sleep, of a time when the ground wasn't so hard and the days so long. But those thoughts are dangerous. They slow your hands, and slow hands attract attention. The reeve calls the end of work just before dusk. You trudge home, spine bent, tools dragging behind you. You do not talk. No one does. There's nothing left to say. Back at the hut, your wife has prepared a pot of pottage, mostly water, thickened with a turnip and a handful of wild greens. The children eat greedily. You eat silently, trying not to think about how thin they've grown. Afterward, you patch a boot, sharpen your scythe, mend the roof with bits of straw scavenged from the manor's threshing floor. There is no rest. Not truly. When the fire dies, you lie beside it and stare into the smoke. The hut is silent again. The darkness presses in. This was a typical day. Not a bad one. No one died. No one was punished. But your body feels as though it's aged 10 years. And tomorrow you'll do it all again. Would you like to continue to section 2 of story 3? The night passes without comfort. You wake several times. Once to the coughing of your youngest, once to a rat scratching near the hearth, and again to the sharp ache in your side from where you lay on the hard floor. You shift, barely, careful not to disturb the others. It's still dark, but sleep won't return. Your body feels spent before the day has even begun. You rise quietly, feeding the coals with a few dried twigs. The fire sputters back to life. You warm your hands over it and stretch, your back cracking, your shoulders tight. The hut smells of damp straw, old smoke, and bodies. Outside, a thin frost lines the thatch. Winter is coming. You can feel it in your bones. There's no breakfast today, just warm water with a handful of oats stirred in. Your wife hands it to you with a tired nod. No words. You drink it slowly, swallowing your hunger alongside it. Today is market day. Not for you to buy, there's no coin in your house, but because the Lord has ordered your village's goods be loaded and hauled to the nearby town. You and 3 others are tasked with pushing a cart loaded with sacks of grain, bundles of flax, and salted fish, all harvested by serf hands, all headed for a profit you'll never see. The cart's wheels stick in the ruts. The road is muddy from last night's rain. You push with your shoulders, slipping, grunting, straining against the weight. One of the boys falls. Another curses. You keep pushing. You don't ask where it's going. You don't ask who will eat this food. It isn't you. When you reach the edge of town, you're told to wait. The steward will handle the exchange. You lean against a stone wall, panting, mud caked up to your knees. You stare at the people passing. The town folk in cloaks and shoes with buckles. Their hands clean, their faces fuller. They don't look at you, or if they do, it's with mild disgust. You're a peasant, a beast of burden. You head back as the sun begins to sink, the cart empty behind you. Your feet are sore, your stomach hollow. You pass a dead hare on the side of the road and wonder briefly if it's worth taking. But it's likely poisoned, or worse, bait for a trap. You leave it, Back in the village, your wife has salvaged some wild onions and cabbage for stew. The pot simmers. The children sit cross-legged on the floor, waiting. You wash your hands with cold water and crouch beside them. The meal is thin but warm. You eat slowly, savoring the bite of the onion, the warmth on your tongue. It's not enough, but it's something. After dinner, there's mending to do. Your daughter's shoes have holes. Your son needs a new shirt before the cold settles in. You repurpose an old sack, stitching it by firelight. The needle pricks your thumb more than once. You say nothing. As night deepens, you sit by the fire, your body still, your eyes heavy. Your wife hums a low tune from her childhood, one she hasn't sung in years. The children lean against her. The wind howls outside, rattling the shutters. Tomorrow it begins again, and the day after that, and the one after that. You don't count the days. You endure them. There's no finish line, no reward, only survival. But in this quiet moment, with your family near, with the fire low and the wind kept outside, you feel something close to peace. Not happiness, not comfort, but peace. You wake before the bells, not because you want to, but because your body never truly sleeps anymore. Your limbs ache. The hay mattress beneath you has flattened to the hardness of earth. The morning air bites your cheeks, even inside the hut. You pull your wool tunic tighter around your shoulders and rise slowly, joints cracking like old wood. Today you've been summoned to work in the manor. Not in the fields, but in the kitchens. A rare task, one you didn't ask for, and one that does not mean ease. It means standing all day near the fire, chopping, carrying, sweating, serving. But at least it's not plowing in the cold. You leave your wife behind, crouched by the hearth. She feeds embers into the fire, stirring a pot with little more than water and leftover grains. The children are still wrapped in rags, breathing softly, unaware that another day of hardship has begun. Outside, frost covers the ground like spilled salt. The trees stand bare. Your breath curls in front of you. You pass others on the path, men and women you've known your whole life, all heading to their own obligations. No one smiles. There's no reason to. The manor rises ahead, stone walls etched in green moss, tall and silent except for the rising smoke from its chimneys. You knock at the side gate and a servant answers. A boy younger than your eldest, already wearing better clothes than you've ever owned. He doesn't greet you. He just nods and gestures for you to follow. Inside it's warm, thick with the smell of meat, lard, onions, and ash. Your stomach tightens at the scent, rich and foreign. You haven't tasted meat in months. You keep your hands folded and your eyes low. They put you to work immediately. You carry sacks of grain from the cellar, stack firewood near the hearth, and scrub carrots in freezing water until your knuckles crack. The cook, a heavy-set woman with arms like tree trunks, orders you about sharply. You don't speak. You nod and obey. Midday passes without notice. No food is given. You drink water from a bucket meant for washing. The manor staff eats separately, small pies, cheese, bits of salted pork. You glance only once and look away. Hunger must not be confused with jealousy. That leads nowhere good. Later, they send you outside to chop more wood. Your hands are numb. The axe is heavy. Each swing sends a jolt up your arms. The sun begins to set, but your work isn't done. The manor lord is hosting guests tonight. That means more fires, more food, more watching others eat while you carry the bones away. When the meal is done, you're given the scraps. Cold fat from the edge of a roast. A crust of bread hardened like stone. You chew slowly and say nothing. The flavor lingers like guilt. As night falls, they send you home. No thanks, no coins, just the privilege of walking back with an aching body and the taste of meat that wasn't yours. You pass the chapel on the way, its candles glowing dimly in the windows. The priest walks past without seeing you. You bow out of habit. Your hut is dark. The fire is nearly out. Your wife stirs the last of the pot and hands you a bowl. The children are already asleep, huddled close to each other. You eat. You sit in silence. You stare at the coals. You survived another day, and that will have to be enough. The following morning greets you with sleet. It stings your cheeks as you walk. The wind finds every gap in your tunic. Your boots are soaked before you reach the Lord's barn. Today's task, mucking stalls. The stench hits first, wet straw, manure, sour hay, and the heavy musk of animals crammed too close together. You begin with the pitchfork, scooping piles of waste into the cart. The straw sticks to your hands. The cold makes your fingers swell. You wipe your nose on your sleeve and keep moving. The barn is filled with the low moans of cows and the clatter of restless hooves. The Lord's horses are sleek and well-fed. They eat oats finer than any bread you've tasted. One of them eyes you as you work, breathing steam, tail flicking. You step carefully. A kick from a horse could end your life or at least your usefulness. And if you're not useful, you're expendable. By midday, your arms are numb from hauling muck. The cart is full. You push it to the heap outside the manor wall, where the rest of the village's waste rots under tarps and snow. The smell is unbearable. You breathe through your mouth, which doesn't help. Back in the barn, they give you another task, mending a broken gate. You have no tools of your own. You use twine and a rusted nail, hammering with the side of a stone. It holds just barely. Later, the reeve comes to inspect. He tuts and says it's not good enough, that if the gate fails again, you'll be docked your next grain share. You nod, apologize, promise better. There's no room to argue. The sun sets early in winter. Shadows fall across the fields like blankets. The cold deepens. Your clothes are soaked through, your hands raw and chapped. You return home slower tonight, shoulders heavy. Inside, the children are coughing. Your wife sits near the fire, her face lined with worry. She says the baby hasn't eaten all day. You give her your share, what little you were given from the manor kitchen. A crust, a smear of lard on a bone. She takes it, silent, and feeds it to the baby with her fingers. You sit and rub your knees. They're swollen again. You fear what it means. You can't afford to fall ill. Later, you lie on the floor, listening to the wind push against the walls. You think of the barn, of the horses' eyes, the steam rising from their backs. You think of how they are fed and kept warm. And for a moment, just a moment, you wonder what it would be like to be the Lord's horse. By the third day, you are moving without thinking. Your body does the work. Your mind stays somewhere else. Quiet, numb, suspended. You walk to the manor again. Today, the task is collecting kindling in the woods. It's one of the few times you're allowed beyond the fields. The forest is bare, quiet, gray. The trees groan in the wind. You carry a basket and a small axe. You gather fallen branches, snapping them over your knee. You do not go far. The forest is old. Some say haunted. Others just say it's dangerous. You stick to the path, eyes scanning for dry wood, ears tuned to the silence. As you work, you find signs of others. A dugout pit here, a bundle of twigs tied with cloth there. Someone else is foraging. Probably others like you. Maybe outlaws. Maybe villagers too hungry to obey rules. You keep to yourself. On the way back, you pass a patch of mushrooms. You hesitate. Some are edible, others deadly. You pick one and sniff it. No smell. You toss it away. You can't risk it. Back at the manor, you deliver the wood to the steward. He counts the bundles, says nothing, waves you off. The firewood will warm the great hall tonight. You'll be home, under damp blankets, watching your breath rise. At home, your wife shows you a cracked bowl. It fell while she was washing. You nod. You'll try to fix it. Everything in your life is broken and fixed over and over. Nothing ever stays whole. Dinner is nettles and boiled rye. The children don't complain. They know better. After the meal, your wife sings softly, a lullaby her mother taught her. It barely rises above a whisper. The baby calms. The hut is still. You close your eyes and try to hold onto the warmth from the fire, the softness of the song, the weight of your family near you. You do not dream of escape. You dream of tomorrow not being worse, and that, in this time, is enough. The first thing you notice is the smell. Salt, sweat, damp wood. The sea clings to everything like a second skin, and it follows you into every moment of your waking life. You're aboard a merchant ship in the year 1380, bound from London to Bruges, and nothing about this journey feels stable. Not the planks beneath your feet, not the food in your gut, not the future ahead. You are not a sailor. You are a cargo porter, paid to guard the barrels and crates and cloth bundles lashed to the hull. You do not steer. You do not shout orders from the rigging. Your job is to keep the Lord's goods from falling into the sea, or from being stolen by someone with a sharper knife and fewer morals. The ship rocks constantly, like the rhythm of a slow, drunk heartbeat. You've grown used to the motion, but it still tugs at your stomach when the waves rise. You live, sleep, and eat in a space the size of a hayloft, crammed with 10 other men who snore, sweat, and smell just like you. The air is thick with dampness, made worse by the occasional stench from a broken barrel or a rat nest torn open by mistake. The food is worse than what you had on land, which you didn't think was possible. Hard biscuits full of weevils, dried fish that turns your stomach with its sour taste, weak beer, safer than water but barely drinkable. You chew slowly and without thinking, more out of duty than hunger. Each morning begins with the scrape of boots above deck. The captain barks orders. Sails are adjusted. Ropes are pulled. And you, if the weather is kind, are allowed to stretch your back and breathe the salt air. You watch the gray horizon and feel the cold wind slice across your face. There is no land in sight. Only gulls overhead and endless rolling water. One day bleeds into the next. You lose track of time. The sun is your clock, but clouds often hide it. Storms come without warning. When they do, everyone is summoned. Even you. You're given a line and told to pull, to tie, to hold tight. The rain lashes your skin like whips. The cold sinks into your chest. But no one complains. Complaining is wasted breath, and you'll need all of it when the ship starts tilting. You learn to fear silence more than storms. A quiet sea can mean fog. Fog can hide pirates, and pirates are far more dangerous than rain. At least the rain doesn't take your head. One night, while rocking in your bunk, the man beside you whispers about a ship that vanished in this very stretch. No wreckage, no bodies, just gone, swallowed. You don't believe him, but later, when the ship creaks in a way it never has before, your stomach tightens anyway. At port, when the ship finally drifts into Bruges harbor, it doesn't feel like arrival. Feels like a pause. Unloading is fast. You haul barrels down a slick plank, your legs shaking from days at sea. The city is busy, filled with voices you don't understand and smells that are almost familiar but not quite. You stay close to the ship. You know your place. You sleep ashore for one night in a warehouse corner. It's colder than the ship. Harder too. But the stillness is a blessing. In the morning, the captain calls. The tide has turned. You're going back. You board again without a word. The next journey is rougher. A windstorm catches the sails mid-channel and rips part of the rigging clean. Men shout. A spar cracks and falls. One sailor is thrown against the mast and doesn't get up. You are told to lash the cargo tighter. You do so with shaking hands. Salt water floods the lower deck. The rats drown first. You pray aloud for the first time in years. You promise things you don't believe. You clutch the nearest rope and close your eyes. The storm passes, but leaves its mark. 2 men gone, 1 injured. The ship lists slightly to the left now, favoring its wounded side. No one talks about it. Talking gives it shape. Better to forget. Better to focus on work. The days grow colder. Food runs lower. You chew the biscuits more slowly. Ignore the weevils. They're protein, you tell yourself. A gull lands on the rail one morning. You watch it with envy. It flies without ropes. It eats without work. You wonder if it knows where it's going. The night air grows colder, the wind more bitter. Ice begins to form along the rails. You wear every layer you have, but your fingers still ache. The beer freezes in the barrel. The bread turns to stone. One man begins coughing, a deep, wet sound that doesn't stop. By the 3rd day, he can't rise. The captain says nothing. Neither do you. When he dies, they slide him overboard before sunrise. No one watches. No one prays. The water takes him quietly. You think about home, a hut, a wife, A child who may have grown taller in your absence. You picture them clearly, but it feels like fiction, like something you once heard in a dream. You wonder if they think of you. Land appears at last, first as a smudge, then a shoreline. London. The river is choked with other ships, sails flapping like crows in the wind. The city smells of smoke and filth, but to you it smells like relief. You unload. You report to the steward. He nods, tosses you a coin. Not enough. Never enough. You walk home slowly, legs trembling, eyes blurry. Your wife greets you with silence. Your child doesn't recognize you at first. You sit by the fire. You close your eyes. You breathe. And for the first time in weeks, the world doesn't move beneath you. But in your bones, the sea still rocks. And in your dreams, the waves never stop. You open your eyes to the sound of bells. Not church bells. Not wedding bells. These are warning bells, heavy and urgent, rolling through the narrow stone streets of your town like thunder. It's the year 1348, and the town of York, where you live and work, no longer feels like a place for the living. You rise slowly, every movement heavy with dread. Outside, the alley is empty. The doors on either side are shut tight, marked with chalk. White crosses hastily drawn, symbols of sickness and fear. The air smells strange, a mixture of herbs, old smoke, and something else, something rotting. You don't look too long at the window across the lane. You already know what's behind it. You're a cooper by trade, a maker of barrels. You used to have steady work, shaping wood into storage for ale, salted meat, and grain. But these days, most people don't need barrels. They need coffins, or firewood, or silence. The street is unusually quiet for mourning. Even the dogs have stopped barking. Somewhere, a woman weeps softly. Somewhere else, a man prays, loud and desperate. You step outside, tucking a cloth soaked in vinegar into your tunic. You were told it helps. No one knows what helps, but you do it anyway. Your neighbor's house has been boarded shut. You helped nail the door yourself last night. The family inside begged, pounded, screamed. They were coughing, fevered. You couldn't take the risk. Now the street outside is quiet. You wonder if they're dead already. At the edge of town, the grave diggers work silently. Their shovels strike stone, then soil. The carts filled with bodies are lighter now. Not because there are fewer dead, but because there are fewer to collect them. The death toll climbs and the living grow scarce. You pass the apothecary's stall. It's abandoned, bottles shattered, dried herbs scattered to the wind. No one left to mix powders. No one left to buy them. You remember when the street was filled with voices, vendors calling out prices, neighbors chatting, children playing in the mud. Now it's like walking through a painting, frozen and still. You make your way to the cathedral, hoping for answers, hoping for anything. The doors are closed. A parchment nailed to the frame says Mass is cancelled until further notice. You don't bother reading the rest. You've heard the sermons before. The plague is punishment. The plague is God's wrath. The plague is a test. You're tired of all of it. You don't go home. You walk instead, down empty alleys, past shuttered windows. The city is shrinking, not in size but in spirit. The laughter is gone. The smells of baking bread, of stew, of firewood crackling in hearths. they're gone too. By dusk, the bell tolls again. Another soul has slipped away. You pull your cloak tighter and begin walking back, but slower now. You wonder how much longer before the bell tolls for you. The wind carries ash through the town square. You watch from a distance as two men in dark robes burn a pile of clothing in the street. The fire crackles, spitting embers into the night. They wear masks shaped like birds, beaks filled with herbs and sweet-smelling petals, meant to protect them from whatever is killing everyone else. You don't know their names. No one does. They arrive, collect the dead, light fires, and vanish again like shadows. Someone whispers that they are not men at all, but spirits sent to ferry the souls of the infected. Someone else says they are physicians. You don't know which story feels more comforting. A child runs past you, barefoot and coughing. Her dress is too thin for the cold. No one stops her. No one even looks. She disappears around a corner. You tell yourself not to follow. The town is darker now. The candles in windows are fewer. The shops boarded up. The churchyard overflows with graves. So many that new ones are dug 2 and 3 deep. The priest stopped reading names days ago. He simply blesses the ground and moves on. Your own hands have begun to tremble. Not from illness, from fear. You tell yourself it's nothing, just cold, just hunger. But in the quiet of your room, by the weak glow of the coals in the brazier, you wonder. You count the days since you last felt warmth in your chest, since you last laughed, since anyone knocked on your door without bad news. You try to pray, but the words feel thin, worn down from overuse. You whisper them anyway. Outside, the rain begins again. It falls lightly at first, then heavier. You pull your cloak tighter and sit on the edge of your bed, watching water trace lines down the inside of the window. You close your eyes and try to remember something good. A summer day, the taste of honey, the sound of your wife's voice before the sickness took her. You hold on to it, just for a moment. Then the coughing starts again, this time from the house next door. You lie back and wait. The morning light filters in gray and cold. You rise slowly, body stiff, head pounding. You slept only in fragments, haunted by dreams of smoke, of hands reaching through the dark, of bells that would not stop ringing. You open the door. The air is still. For the first time in weeks, there is no sound outside, not even the bell. You walk cautiously through the street. A cart stands abandoned in the middle of the lane, one wheel broken. A dog lies beside it, unmoving. Doors hang open on hinges. Windows gape like empty eyes. No one calls out. No one greets you. You realize slowly that the silence you prayed for has come, but not in the way you hoped. You climb a hill just outside town, the one overlooking the old abbey ruins. From here, you can see the rooftops. Smoke still curls from a few chimneys. Signs of life, or at least survival. You sit. You breathe. You think of how it was, and how it will never be again. You're not sure what comes next. Maybe the plague will end. Maybe it won't. Maybe you'll wake tomorrow and find that your lungs no longer ache. Or maybe you won't wake at all. But for now, for this one quiet morning, you are alive. And in a world that has forgotten how to be gentle, that is a kind of victory. You begin your day in darkness. Not because it's night, but because you live underground. The year is 1765. And you are a coal miner in the hills of northern England. one of hundreds who descend before sunrise into tunnels that run like veins beneath the countryside. You eat your bread in silence, sip your weak tea, and light your tallow candle stub. Your wife says little. She just ties the scarf around your neck and presses a hand to your shoulder before you leave. The air outside is cold, but clean. You savor it. It's the last you'll breathe for the next 12 hours. At the pit mouth, you join the others. Men with faces already darkened from yesterday's work, boys barely 10 years old, and old men with crooked backs who can barely hold their shovels. The foreman grunts. A bell rings. The lift begins to lower. The descent is slow and shuddering. Wooden beams creak. The light fades with each meter. You grip the edge of the cart, knuckles white. A boy beside you trembles but says nothing. You understand. There's no room for fear here. When the cart stops, you step out into a tunnel so narrow you must stoop immediately. The walls drip with condensation. The smell is familiar: earth, damp stone, and something bitter and metallic. You light your candle and hold it in one hand, your pickaxe in the other. You crawl deeper. The coal seam you worked today is only 3 feet high. You lie on your side, swing the pick in short, awkward arcs. Sparks fly. Dust clouds the air. You blink rapidly, eyes stinging. The coughing begins within an hour. It won't stop for the rest of the day. You work beside men who've been in the mines longer than you've been alive. They barely speak, only grunt when the coal shifts, when a beam groans, when something doesn't sound quite right. You keep your ears open. A wrong sound can mean collapse, a trapped pocket of gas, a death no one will bother to explain. Midday comes without notice. You pause to drink water from a tin flask. Tastes of iron. Your shirt clings to your back. Your hands are black, nails lined with soot. You rub your eyes and smear more filth across your face. A bell rings once, an accident above ground. But you don't stop working. No one does. It doesn't matter unless it's your name they shout. Later, a boy passes with a small cart, collecting the chunks you've pried loose. He's thin as a broom handle, his feet bare. He coughs with every step. You nod. He doesn't look at you. By the time your shift ends, your shoulders burn, your fingers are numb, and your candle is nearly gone. You hear the call to rise, and you follow the others back toward the shaft. The lift groans under the weight of so many bodies. The ascent is slow. You breathe shallowly. The walls feel closer than they did this morning. When you reach the surface, the sun is gone. You squint anyway, blinded by the faintest light. You cough once, hard, and black phlegm lands at your feet. Your wife is waiting at home. She offers a basin of water. You wash your hands, your face, your neck. It doesn't come clean. Not fully. It never does. She serves soup, turnips, and barley. You eat silently, listening to your children sleep. Your body feels like stone. You lie down on the straw mat, back curling around the ache in your ribs. And just before sleep takes you, you wonder how many more years your lungs will hold. The next morning is colder. You dress quickly. The fire has long since burned out. Your breath clouds in front of you. You wrap your scarf tighter and kiss your wife's forehead without words. At the pit mouth, a new face joins the line. A boy, maybe 12, looking too clean to be believed. His father stands behind him, jaw tight, hand on the boy's shoulder. The foreman checks their names, then waves them forward. The boy meets your eyes for a second, then looks down. The descent feels longer today. The cart stops short. You step into ankle-deep water. It will soak through your boots and stay with you all day. Your feet are numb before your first swing. You work slowly at first. Your muscles protest every movement. The dust is heavier than yesterday. Someone says the ventilation shaft is blocked. No one investigates. There's no time. Coal doesn't wait. The boy is nearby now, dragging coal pieces into a wooden tub. He stumbles. You reach out, steady him. He nods. That's enough. Hours pass. The walls seem closer than before. The timber beams creak louder. You taste something metallic on your tongue. It's too soon to be blood, but it's not far off. A sudden shout cuts through the silence. A beam has cracked 2 tunnels over. Everyone freezes. You hold your breath, ears straining. Then a groan, a rumble, a dull thud, silence. Then, just the slow drip of water again. You resume work, carefully, quietly. The shift ends 2 hours later, but no one says it out loud. You just feel it in your bones. You rise and walk toward the lift, head low. The boy is behind you now, breathing hard, covered in soot. He looks older already. At home, your wife says nothing when you arrive. She just hands you a cup of tea. You drink it, hands shaking. Then you hold her hand for a long time without speaking. The 3rd day begins with news. A man died in Tunnel 3. Collapse. His name was Thomas. Someone you passed often but never really knew. The foreman doesn't offer details. Just a shake of the head and the usual warning. Keep your ears sharp. Keep your hands moving. You nod. You all nod. Then you descend again. Today you work near a narrow bend in the shaft. It's barely large enough for your body. You lie on your stomach and swing the pick in cramped, awkward motions. Each strike sends pain through your elbows. The dust is thick. Your candle guttered hours ago. You work in near darkness now, guided only by instinct and repetition. The boy returns again, quieter now, more precise. He's stopped coughing as much. Or maybe he's just learned to hide it better. You think about your own son. He's 6, too young for the pit. For now, but not forever. The work is slow. You feel it. Fatigue in your spine, your legs cramping, your lungs resisting. You keep going. That's the rule. You keep going. By dusk, the tunnel is almost silent. Everyone moves slower. You hear whispers of the men who never came home. You picture the tunnels they still lie in, bodies buried with the coal they carved. You wonder if that will be you. And then suddenly you stop wondering, because you see something. Not light, not air, just a tiny beetle crawling along the coal wall, untouched by dust, legs sure and unbothered. You stare at it for a moment too long, and then you smile, because in that moment, it is the only thing in the pit that is alive without effort. When you rise that night, your legs are weak, but your chest is full not with air, but with the knowledge that even in the dark, something can move freely. You return home. Your wife is waiting. She asks no questions. She just draws you close. You sleep deeply that night, deeper than you have in weeks. And in your dreams, there are no tunnels, no walls, no weight, only light. The year is 1811 and you are a weaver, not a master, not even a journeyman. Just a man with hands skilled enough to earn a living, but not enough to be spared from the changes sweeping across England. You live in Nottingham, where smoke from chimneys hangs low in the streets and the sound of hammers and gears echoes louder each month. Machines have arrived, looms that do the work of 5 men, and they don't tire, they don't eat, they don't forget patterns, they don't ask for pay. You sit by the window in a rented room, the wooden shuttle clacking back and forth through your loom. The fabric you make is rough, serviceable, good enough for sacks or soldiers, not for lords or ladies. You know the days of your trade are numbered. Your fingers ache. The skin is calloused, stained with dye. Your eyes strain under the dim light of the oil lamp, but you keep weaving. You have to. The landlord doesn't wait. Neither does hunger. Outside, you hear a gathering, muffled voices, boots on cobblestone, tension in the air. The Luddites again. Men like you, angry, desperate. They gather at night now, whispering of rebellion, of smashing machines, of taking back the work stolen from them. You don't go. You have a family, 2 small children, a wife who waits each night with tea that's more water than leaf. You stay in. You listen. You worry. That evening, your neighbor doesn't return. His loom stands silent in the room next door. You hear nothing but wind pushing against the thin shutters. You close your eyes and wonder how long until your room is empty. 2. Morning brings news. A factory just beyond town was broken into. Machines smashed. Cloth set ablaze. The mill owner is furious. The magistrates more so. They've sent soldiers. Redcoats march through the streets now, rifles gleaming, eyes cold. You watch them from your window, your shuttle paused mid-throw. They move in rows, perfect and merciless, like the machines they're protecting. You return to your work. The fabric catches once, then runs smooth again. Your fingers know the motion better than your tongue knows prayer. You've woven the same pattern for years. It's muscle memory now, a rhythm you can follow even in the dark. Later, your wife brings a crust of bread, a weak smile. You share it in silence. Outside, someone is shouting. A boy is being dragged from the alley by soldiers. No one intervenes. You look down and keep weaving. You visit the market for thread. Prices have risen again. The stall is half empty. The merchant shrugs. He blames the unrest. You nod, pay, and walk home with your hands in your pockets. You pass a wall covered in pamphlets, some pleading for workers' rights, others offering rewards for information. You look away. That night, you light a second lamp. The extra oil is a luxury, but the cloth must be finished. The order is due in the morning. If it's not ready, you'll lose the commission. You'll lose the room. Your children are asleep on the floor, their breath steady. Your wife hums a song she learned as a girl. You weave, and weave, and weave, until the lamp gutters, and the fabric runs out. A knock wakes you, sharp, controlled, not friendly. You rise, heart pounding. Outside your door, a man stands in uniform, not a soldier, an inspector. He speaks plainly, asks if you've seen anyone meeting late, if you've heard names, If you've left your home at night, you say no, truthfully. He nods, looks past you into your small, dim room, then leaves. You sit for a long time afterward, the silence loud. Your children wake. Your wife makes tea. The day begins again. But something has shifted. The factory down the road hums louder. The looms inside click and spin. Your own loom stands still. You stare at it. You wonder how long until it becomes obsolete. Until you do. You think of the Luddites, of the broken machines, of the boy dragged from the alley. You wonder if it was worth it. By noon, you've started a new piece. You go slower now, not because you're tired, but because you know it might be the last. Outside, a group of men walk past. Quiet, eyes forward. You recognize one. He nods almost imperceptibly. Then they vanish down the alley. You return to the loom. Your shuttle clacks forward. And you keep weaving. Not because the world rewards it, but because it's what your hands know. Because it's what keeps you human. Because in a world built by machines, the quiet resistance of a man making something by hand feels like the last act of defiance.